The roughly 50 migrants flown unannounced to Martha's Vineyard last week are settling into their latest temporary home, Joint Base Cape Cod in Bourne, complete with access to essential services like healthcare and education for the kids at the town's public schools. But all is not well that ends well, because there are a slew of legal questions surrounding the fact that most of the migrants say they were tricked into getting on the planes with the promise of housing, access to jobs, and education. Not one of them was told about the benefactor of the journey, Ron DeSantis, and his so-called relocation program, which is obviously a cruel political stunt, but could it also be criminal? The local organization Lawyers for Civil Rights believes it is and is urging U.S. Attorney Rachel Rollins and Attorney General Maura Healey to open a criminal investigation. I'm joined by Marian Albert, a staff attorney for the organization, as is State Representative Dylan Fernandes, who represents Martha's Vineyard, Falmouth, and Nantucket. Welcome to both of you. Thanks so much.
Good to be with you.
Representative, starting with you, as I was coming into the studio, I looked at the Boston Globe online, and there's a picture of a plane flying over the vineyard saying Vineyard hypocrites, which pretty much mirrors what I heard on right-wing media over the weekend, which is the elites of Martha's Vineyard want nothing to do with these roughly 50 people from Venezuela through San Antonio. Is there any truth to that at all?
No, and there's a lot to unpack there, but I'll do my best. First, this is a community that immediately rallied as soon as we heard that these people were here. We got no notice whatsoever, but as soon as they got here and we were informed, we rallied to give them the food, shelter, health care, everything they needed to treat them with the humanity and dignity and respect they deserve. But this was a temporary facility with only 2 bathrooms and 1 shower in it. So ultimately, we needed a more sustainable solution. And because here in Massachusetts, here in my communities on the Cape and Islands, we treat human beings like human beings, we gave them the option of going to a much larger facility on Cape Cod where every individual has their own room if they want it, although some our friends are rooming together. Every family has its own space. There are wraparound healthcare services, including mental health, trauma care for kids, as well as continued access to immigration support and healthcare.
So the narrative, the corollary narrative that the same people are spreading, Representative, that this was an expulsion from the vineyard to the joint base is also total BS, correct?
Yeah, it's complete BS. I mean, this was completely voluntary. People can go and come as they want, as they are currently doing right now. Mm-hmm. And look, there's a national narrative here that is being pushed by Republicans that is false about my communities. Martha's Vineyard is an incredibly diverse and welcoming community. Over a third of our school district here is non-white. On Nantucket, the sister island here, over a half is non-white. It's a majority minority school district. Nantucket, by the way, had the biggest population growth of any town in the state since the last census, almost entirely because of new immigrant families. We are an incredibly welcoming, diverse community. And Ron DeSantis, of all people, should know that because he was in my community a month ago, sucking up to donors on Nantucket at a $50,000 a plate dinner.
He should. So, Marian, you and some of your colleagues from your organization have been there since the beginning. What have you heard were the representations made to these people about what they should expect at the other end of that plane ride?
Yeah, sure, Jim. So Lawyers for Civil Rights, and myself included, have been on the ground, like you said, since Thursday. I was there at the Martha's Vineyard when the group of migrants had shortly arrived. And from what a lot of folks shared is that they were made promises to receive, employment, food assistance, clothing, English classes, an array of different services, including assistance with their immigration proceedings moving forward.
You know, I spoke to one of your colleagues, Yvonne, this morning, and I asked the question that I still not quite sure I understand the answer to, which is, what happens to someone who's now on the Cape in Bourne, who's got a hearing or some other legal obligation that he or she has to meet? What do they do? How do they get to it? What happens?
Right. I mean, that's why Lawyers for Civil Rights, along with all the pro bono attorneys that have been on the ground, we have all been working on making sure that all individuals are represented by individual immigration attorneys, so that they are able to address those issues and those questions. So essentially reaching out to immigration officials, communicating that, they're not going to be in whatever office they were originally assigned to, and then rescheduling that or whatever it may be. But those are the efforts that are ongoing now, making sure that everyone has representation moving forward in their immigration proceedings.
Representative, I know that you reached out to the U.S. Attorney, Rachel Rollins. I don't know if you, but others have reached out also to the Attorney General, Maura Healey, about whether there are possible crimes. Here's what Rollins and Healey had to say publicly, at least their offices, about this.
We're hoping to get some input from the Department of Justice about what our next steps might be, if any at all.
My team continues to talk to the Baker administration and local leaders, legislative leaders. The focus right now has been and will continue to be on making sure that the migrants get the housing and are cared for.
Representative, are you getting any different message privately than the one they're delivering publicly?
No, I think we're lucky to have incredibly strong law enforcement officials in the state, and Maura Healey and Rachel Rollins. And look, I've been calling on the Department of Justice to take action here and to look into this. This is not only morally criminal, but there are clear legal implications around, trafficking, deprivation of liberty, fraud at kind of a minimum here, amongst others. So and I spoke with people today. I was on at the facilities today and talked to several individuals who were relayed to me exactly what they went through and gave me a full play-by-play of essentially the last few months of their lives. And they were told that when they were boarding the first plane they got onto, that they were going to Washington, D.C. I mean, if you were told by someone you're going somewhere and then you end up somewhere else and that person knows you're not going there, like, I'm not an attorney, but I would venture to guess there's some legal implications to that. Well,
Marian, I am an attorney, but not a very good one. So let's ask you, I am totally with the representative. If I made a representation to a person on the street, if you get on that plane, here's where you're going to go, here's what you're going to get at the other end of the line, and all of it was complete crap, complete fantasy, misrepresentation, I'm assuming I'd have a problem. Should Ron DeSantis have a problem?
Well, just echoing what the representative said, we've also, as you displayed the letters that we sent to both the state of Massachusetts and federal government calling for the criminal investigation. So we definitely think that there are criminal implications here that should be investigated further.
Like what? Like what specifically? I mean, false imprisonment, human trafficking. What are the potential crimes? Are they them?
Around kidnapping, trafficking, fraud, definitely are things that should be explored. On a parallel track, Lawyers for Civil Rights is also exploring civil implications. That we definitely think that there might be some viable constitutional claims that can be asserted, and that's definitely being explored further at our office in our legal team.
Marian, I have one more question for you, well, a number more, but one that I have not seen answered, and I've almost been too embarrassed to ask. I understand the Florida legislature has appropriated whatever it is, $12 million to essentially throw people who are, for the most part, at least in terms of these people, trying to escape horrible things back home out of the state of Florida. What I don't understand is, how does Ron DeSantis, even if there were no misrepresentations, how does Ron DeSantis have the power with those dollars to have somebody kicked out of a state that he has no jurisdiction over, Texas, to go to another locale? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we are definitely exploring all viable options and getting as much information as we can to ensure that we don't let any responsible party repeat this again, and to hold everyone accountable.
Or even an irresponsible party like him. Dylan Fernandes, one of the things that's most troubling to me about this, because I've seen your quotes and they've been very strong about the cruelty here, and I agree with every single word you've uttered. But the sad reality to me is this is a Trump wannabe, Ron DeSantis, who is following the same manuscript that Donald Trump followed on, or at least announced on day one. Rapists, criminals, not the best, etc. That's what he's trying to do. And there is a piece of this country, sadly, in 2022 that eats that up, isn't there?
There is. And you should see my inbox right now, and how ugly it is. And
well, tell us about it. Tell us how ugly it is.
Well, I mean, my poor staff has had to listen to voicemails, but we've had to alert the state police of death threats, and I'm getting stuff all the time. It speaks to the nature of where we're at in this country, where treating human beings with dignity is a controversial thing. I mean, it is mind-blowing to me that any human being could be this depraved to think that this is an acceptable thing to do, to use women and children as political pawns just to get on Tucker Carlson and to pretend to be tough on immigration. What I do think we need to be grounded in is that these are human beings, and every human being deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. And here in Massachusetts, here in my communities on the Cape and Islands, no matter how many people get used as political pawns and come here, we're going to show them that humanity, and we're going to be there to support them.
I want to be clear, though, before we leave that, your office has received death threats. You've received death threats as a result of your advocacy for these people.
Yeah, I haven't listened to them personally. My poor staff has gone through our voicemail, and the state police has reached out to me to say that they're looking into them.
Marian, a final legal question. Correct me if I'm wrong. Certain migrants from Venezuela have temporary protected status. Am I right about that?
There was a TPS designation for Venezuela, but the date might have been for March of 2021, I believe.
So who would have to act? Congress to extend that date so that people who've come in this recent group would be covered by that and they'd be protected? Is Congress the body of last resort?
The secretary, right? They would have to extend the designation for TPS for Venezuela. So the
Biden administration itself could give them that status, extend that status to them, should it choose to.
Right. I mean, they have to extend the TPS designation. But I mean, the folks that were present in this group also had other viable immigration, claims that they could
like
make.
Asylum claims, that sort of thing?
Yes. Or if there are other, like a potential for a U visa through the criminal investigation as well.
Before you go, Representative, this may be a naive question in light of what you said about the phone messages you've gotten. There was a time not too long ago when a Republican senator from Florida, who's still there, Marco Rubio, was part of a gang of 8 in the Senate, 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats, who advocated for a comprehensive immigration reform. He's done a virtual 180. Do you think things like this, though, similar situations with larger numbers in New York, D.C., Chicago, could spur some action post midterms, or are we so polarized that it's totally hopeless?
I never lose hope as a legislator. I think you always have to hope for something better. And look, I actually regret bringing up the death threat piece. For me, I think a couple of voicemails I've received is nothing compared to what these people have gone through. Some have walked 60 days just to get to the border, followed by gang violence. Some were robbed. Others were physically harmed. Don't worry about my voicemail. What does matter is the incredible plight that these people have gone through. And then once they finally got here, after going through all of that, they weren't met with human decency. They were met with a lie and shipped off and used. But we're going to treat people like human beings here.
Well, let me just seize on that before you go. And I would like to believe that if Ron DeSantis was an honest soul and was in the same situation that one of these family was in Colombia or in Venezuela, that if he loved his family, he'd probably do the exact same thing that they were doing. Marian Albert, Dylan Fernandes, Representative, thank you both for your time. Really appreciate it.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.